Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell. It is 11 a.m. Eastern, Thursday morning. It is time for the Real Dope podcast, the show where we talk about you, the enabler, not the addict. It is a show focused on people who love, support, and quite frankly, have to deal with addicts. I'm hanging out here with my sister, Beth Brand.
Hello.
And I like to remind you before we get started, we are not therapists, we are not doctors, we're not even true experts in the field of addiction. We're just people like you that have had to deal with loving, supporting, and quite frankly, having to deal with addicts. So, Beth, what's on tap for today?
We are going to talk about dealing with judgment. I know as a person who, with our father and with my husband, I felt a lot of embarrassment and feeling a lot of judgment, something that I tried to hide from people, which you're not really hiding it from anyone, but So we're going to talk about judgment, your own judgment of yourself, the judgment you feel from other people, and maybe the judgment you give to the person suffering with addiction.
I love it. Let's dive in.
Welcome to The Real Dope, a podcast for anyone walking alongside someone battling addiction, based on the powerful book, The Real Dope on Dealing with an Addict, by sisters Elizabeth Brand and Meridith Elliott Powell. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share authentic stories, and provide the honest guidance. Let's begin today's journey and turn survival into strength.
So I was thinking about today's show and I was thinking about judgment. And I think just to put things in context, I think it's important to just define what judgment is. It's basically what you're doing is, in my opinion, I'd be curious what you think, labeling or condemning someone or yourself based on behavior, choices, or lifestyle or something. How do you define it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's our mind's natural way of our brains love to categorize.
Yeah.
And so we like to put this in categorization, or a person is bad or dumb or whatever, and just slap a label on without understanding. When you judge someone, you put an end to the curiosity.
So I was thinking about this, and one of the most, this is probably an odd place to start, but one of the most interesting things I think about judgment is the sicker that daddy got with addiction, the more that he started to drown, no pun intended, in his own disease, the more judgmental he became.
Yes.
And very judgmental. Like he would not, he always put down men who had facial hair. He didn't want anything to do with them. He had a lot of judgment against people who smoked, and a lot of judgment against anybody that did any type of drugs. And I felt like I saw that a lot in Al-Anon, is that there was people who drank who had loved ones who were drug addicts, really didn't see any similarities. Not that there needs to be similarities, but it was like alcohol was okay and drugs were wrong. And it just makes me, I guess judgment too is a way of protecting yourself.
Of making yourself feel better. If something else, a person or a behavior is less than, then you're justifying yourself. Like I know a lot of alcoholics would just think that drug addicts were the worst. Like at least I don't do drugs, as if it's different, And enablers, we judge people who have some problems with addiction, like we're the angels, and we're just as sick and weird as they are. So yeah. I think it comes, and you know what? You also you see it in old age. I think it's a way of brain sorting and justifying through judgment to make yourself feel better about whatever's going wrong in your life. And so I do think that people who, if you have someone suffering with addiction in your life and people judge you, then then you feel Peter's talking.
Oh, so Peter's talking.
I get confused.
It's messing you up. I do that too. I can't stop listening to the other conversation going on.
I know. But I do think it's a brain sorting. It's a way of making of a pattern so you can feel better then.
Yeah, and I think it's a way that that you not only feel better then, but you can make yourself safe. Like, well, at least like I remember even with judgment, like when Doug was drinking and his drinking was out of control, I would have a friend who had the same problem, but their significant other drank in the morning, and I would be like, well, gosh, Doug doesn't drink in the morning, like so your husband is worse than my husband.
Yeah, well, I thought, well, at least, I'm not a battered woman.
Yeah,
If, he doesn't hit me, that's great. As
right.
if, as if what I was living through was survivable in any way. And
Yeah,
it really, really wasn't. And it wasn't any different. I mean, maybe like I didn't get like physically harmed, but to the point where, I think there was a point where I was standing between him and his Xanax. I think he would knock me over to get that. But yeah, I felt like, well, at least I'm not them, making you feel like safe in the second or a little bit better then.
yeah.
But
And then I
go
do
ahead.
think one of the biggest places that I ever felt judged was in the hospital. I remember when I took Doug in, and they, said pretty much he was going to die. He did not, but
Mhm.
they said he was going to die. That the doctors were cruel to me.
Mhm.
I mean, they truly treated me less than, and to some degree, I'm not justifying it, but I understand it. I mean, they're stressed out, they're exhausted, they're being called in at 2 a.m. to try to take care of this, alcoholic who probably is going to just start drinking all over again. But it was like I got thrown in the same bucket with him. Like
Mhm.
I was, I was bothering them, and I didn't deserve, nor neither did my husband. I didn't deserve to be communicated with, and um, he didn't deserve to be saved.
But again, yeah, that's where I think the curiosity again stops with them. Like doctors don't like drug addiction because, oh, the person's just going to do it again, or it's not solvable, or whatever. But they're doctors, and that judgment shouldn't be. So how did you hold your own in that, or did you?
I didn't. I
Yeah,
look
what
at
did
it
you?
now, and later in life, I got really, really strong, but I was too young at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hold my own in it. I remember really well that I couldn't get a response from a doctor, and I think you probably talked me into paging the doctor. That's how long ago
Mm.
it was, because you were so much better in the hospital than I was.
I'm very good in a hospital.
Very
Not so
good.
great in life, but I'm very good at the hospital.
So I paged the doctor because I didn't know what was going on. Nobody had talked to me in over 48 hours. And the
Wow.
doctor and the doctor was at a party, and he called me back and he screamed at me and he said, "I don't even know why you're bothering. He's just going to die anyway." And if I had been the age I am now, or even 10 years more on me, I would have really let him have it at that point. But I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough. I was passing my own judgment on
Right.
myself.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have to tell me he thought I was less than. I thought that of myself. So, so I
And
just didn't.
Doug thought that of himself too,
Yeah.
that he didn't deserve. So you treat me
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And
yeah.
you look at that situation where you almost put like Doug's life in danger by the shame that we feel for not, because the situation is so impossible and so shameful.
Yeah.
But the truth of that matter is, like, one thing I love about having lived through all this with 5 people with addiction is everybody is somebody's child.
Yeah.
And I would never, I don't like I stopped a lot of judging because of everything that we've been through. Like I stopped because you don't know what people have been through or where they've come from. And
Yeah.
Doug and Edward and our father were certainly very worthy people, no matter what. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's
I'll tell you
society.
the other judgment that changed things for me is like I was always so ashamed of my life. I mean, I really think about like, in my 20s and 30s, like you and mother were really my only friends. That was the only people I ever really hung out with because I didn't want to let anybody. I had a lot of acquaintances,
Mm.
But I didn't, nobody ever got really close to my life because I was ashamed of it. And I was trying to think of the moment that I switched that in my head, and maybe it was enough therapy to do it, but I moved the judgment to thinking I shouldn't be ashamed. Most people wouldn't have survived what I
No
survived.
joke. Yeah.
And my judgment of myself went from thinking that I was weak to thinking I'm kind of a badass. And just that flip in my head, it's amazing what you believe really sparks your actions, really sparks your beliefs, which really gets your results. And the cool thing about that is I think with judgment, it may not happen overnight, but you have the ability to change how you think and feel about what you're going through.
Yeah. I can remember thinking after our husbands died, and I guess our count was like 4 men. We'd lost 4 men or more in our life by then. And we remember laughing because we're like thinking, who's ever going to date us? Because we're Black widows. And, but people did date us and they wanted to date us. And I would still tell them the story, and they still thought they could live through dating me or being in my life after so many men had died. But I also think it was really important, like when you wanted us to write the book and everything, because you and I, just look so normal and we have successful businesses and I mean, it surprises people.
Yes.
And I think it's good, that we have so much addiction in our family.
Yeah.
And I think putting that shame aside and not caring about the judgment. I mean, obviously we have a podcast, but I also tell everybody I'm not shy about it when people ask me what Edward died from and stuff.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm in New York City right now. I keynoted this morning, and it was a top women financial advisors, and we got into Q&A, and I was just talking a lot about just a lot about my life, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. I'm really I don't know that I'm proud of it. I don't know what I am, because I'm not. It's very sad.
It's just like if somebody died of cancer, we would say that. That is what happened. That's the disease in our family.
Right. Yeah, that's the tragedy. One of my favorite stories, though, about judgment that always makes me laugh is that, like you said, you were smart enough never to get between Edward and his Xanax. Yeah. I was not smart enough not to get between Doug and his alcohol. So there was violence in our relationship. And I was talking about it one time at a women's conference. This was years ago. And I was talking about, everything that had happened. And the fact that financially I was upside down. I was not in good shape, in the sense that I took on a lot of debt because of the fact that he didn't work. I made good money, but, my relationships were definitely in a deficit. I was definitely not in good health. I was, very overweight. And then I'd been in this abusive relationship, and then really talked pretty significantly about some of the violence in it. And after the thing was over, all the women wanted to know was what I had done to lose weight.
Oh man, that's so sad.
To this day, it just cracks me up.
Yeah.
Because talk about judgment. It's like at the time in your life when you are dealing with this level of dealing with an addict, like, give yourself a break.
Exactly.
You look bad if you're whatever, because it is the highest, most stressful thing. I mean, I think about that time you went to Walmart and right after you'd left Edward, and you gave them your driver's license, and she said, "That's not you, honey." Because, I mean, you aren't at your best self, and don't judge yourself for that, because you can't be. You are dealing with so much.
Yeah, and it really shows, like, on your face.
Oh God, yeah, you look. Yeah. You look, you look.
I mean, old. I was, I used it in talks. I was 35 and I looked 55. And I used to show the 2 licenses. I had one when I was 35, one when I was 45. And the 45-year-old looks 20 years younger than the 35-year-old.
Yeah.
I look so bad. But definitely judgment, shame. But obviously, I think we judge ourselves hardest.
Yes. I do too. I also think something that's confusing, though, about judgment, and something you need to think about, is the addict judges you. And the addict judges you very harshly. I mean, I remember Doug screaming at me because I had been a waitress when he had married me. And now I just had these aspiration and dreams to become something else, which was not very high at the time. So all I was really trying to do
I'm going to be a banker.
That's right. All I was trying to do was pay bills. But that I was all high and mighty. And I mean, there was so much judgment coming from him. And that judgment, if you're isolated, if you're not getting the support you need, that judgment wears you down.
Well, they don't want you to change because there's a fear you'll leave.
Yeah.
And if you had financial independence, you would have the ability to leave.
Yeah.
And then where would they be? Also, they're not going anywhere in their life.
Right.
And they don't want you to go anywhere in yours.
Yeah.
But no matter what it is, they beat you up. And the whole confusion of how many times they tell you you're wrong. And when you're isolated, and I was isolated, we were living in Tennessee, pretty remotely. And, I didn't, and plus he was my husband. I loved him. Like we had a relationship and I believed him. And that was really hard.
Yeah. And I think, I think some of the judgment too, I think is well-meaning judgment. We've talked about this before on the show, but it's the judgment of, well, couldn't you have saved him? Couldn't you help him?
Mm.
Like somehow it's your fault he drinks or he takes pills or does whatever.
Yeah. And people coming up with solutions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another thing I've learned to be really careful about. First of all, a lot of people aren't ready to hear the solutions. So you have to be really cautious about, even if they're asking for your advice, a lot of times they don't really want the end result of your advice. Like any therapy, they have to grow into where they're going. I mean, how many people we talk to with children that are in crisis and they don't like our answers or how, or how casual we seem about how we would handle the situation, even though everybody's different. But yeah, you get a lot of judgment coming from that. A lot of judgment from leaving or not leaving. It doesn't really matter which road you choose. There's going to be a lot of judgment coming down at you. People are going to blame you for staying, and they're going to say, the end result of all that is you have to grow up and figure out, you have to find your gut again.
Yeah.
And figure out what to do.
Yeah. I was actually talking about that this morning, a little bit of just taking the quiet time and just, listening to your own voice. Cause I think you're making such a great point. Like what people have asked me so often, I didn't leave Doug until I was 36 years old, and we never technically divorced. He died before then. So we were just legally separated. But people have always asked me if I wish I'd left sooner. And the thing I think about that is that I think you take action in the right time. I think you take action at the time that is right for you if you are truly listening to yourself and not judging yourself. Like I think the biggest and most helpful thing you ever said to me was, you don't have to leave him forever, just leave him for today.
Yeah.
And, and that was, and therefore when I left, when we split, I felt like I had dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and I was at peace with if he didn't make it, I was at peace with that because I felt that I had done everything that I felt I could do.
Yeah. And you have to get to that point or it just won't stick anyway. You have to feel, it just goes back to your doctor thing. It's like addiction is so messy. And the fact of the matter is, like, we don't have any good answers. I mean, it is kind of like weight loss, except now we have Ozempic drugs and stuff like that. But before that, it's complicated and people don't really know. And with addiction more so, and with enabling more so, there aren't any right answers. There are only your answers, which we would like an expert to tell us what to do, but they can't because they don't know. Mm-hmm. They can give you advice. They can tell you like what other people have done, but Al-Anon and therapy are both about finding yourself and finding your gut and finding your voice. And that's what's going to help you heal from enabling. And when you start to heal from enabling, you're just in a better spot all the way around.
I think that, I think it's always important. Like, I think one of the ways to start to turn judgment around is in yourself, but also when it comes from other people, is people are judging you for one reason. And the reason they're judging you is they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I think about I think about this time I was playing in a golf tournament at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was behind these two guys in a cart, and they were drinking screwdrivers at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, talking about the fact that the guy who'd planned the tournament, his son was a pretty bad drug addict. And saying, I don't understand how this kid can do drugs. Like, why didn't so-and-so do something to turn him around? And I thought to myself, at some point in there's a little bell going off going, I don't feel my best when I drink screwdrivers at 9 o'clock in the morning, but at least then I'm not a drug addict. Or maybe my kids are a little messed up, but at least they're not that. Is that if you can put it in perspective, people are judging you because they're fearful that whatever it is that you're going to is going to happen to them. I don't know if you remember this, but back when we used to go to Barbara Johnson was talking about kids getting kidnapped in the park or something, something atrocious like that. And she said one of the reasons people blame the mother for not keeping an eye on the child, or, the father for, taking 4 kids at one time instead of just 2 kids or something, is because they're looking for a logical explanation why that would never happen to them, rather than just putting it out there. And so judgment comes from fear. And if you can get that into perspective, that the person judging you probably maybe even subconsciously has something going on in their life that makes them judge you, that it isn't about you.
It's like when we had to put mother in assisted living, and she had to start out in independent living, and all the people, nobody would talk to her because she had dementia.
Yeah.
So, like, that was a rarity there. But they were afraid of it. I mean, they wouldn't make friends because they were afraid, because they saw, it's like we love to have causes for diseases.
Yes.
Because then we can say, well, that's not my lifestyle, so that didn't happen to me. But you're never safe. Anybody can, obviously we're all going to die. So
right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But I definitely agree with that they judge you because, well, that's a life that we don't live. So that's not going to happen. I'm not going to have alcoholism. And also if they think that it's just a behavior.
Yeah.
Or something broken in you that you end up with a drug addict, that brokenness doesn't occur in them.
Yeah.
But I would argue it does occur in them.
Yeah. And I think when you're judgmental, because we're all judgmental, that you have to ask yourself, what's your fear? Like, what's driving your judgment of others? Because the truth is, why do you judge people that have nothing to do with your life? Yeah. Like, if somebody's, sitting next to me drinking, 12, cocktails on a plane, like, I'm not traveling with them. Why do I judge them? And believe me, I do. If you're drinking on a plane, I judge you. It's just because I'm so afraid of that coming back into my life. I'm so afraid of, like, that is so about me and not about them.
I mean, talk about enabling. When I see that, like, I was on a plane, it was like, and it wasn't 9 o'clock in the morning, but it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He was going to work after that because he talked to me. He had 2 scotches on the plane. And I'm going like, how do you go to work after that? And then I started to worry. I mean, that's what an enabler I am. Like, that just triggered my enabling right there. I'm like, how's he going to get off the plane? How's he going to be all right? And he probably does it all the time. And probably has more than 2 scotches. We weren't going that far.
And the truth is, it has nothing to do with you. Like, you're not hiring him. You're not going to work with him. So, I think that's the important thing about judgment. If you can realize that when people are judging you, like, if I could go back in time and have that doctor again, I wouldn't have even been nasty or mean. I just would have been very forthright, and I would have let his judgment roll off of me. Realize that was about him. It wasn't about me. And then now in my life, when I have judgment, is to really, even though I have it, I can't always stop myself from having it. But to realize that this is my stuff. It's not the stuff of the other person. They have nothing to do with my life, and I shouldn't judge it. And that's that's an area for me to work on.
And if you can even, turn that, like, if somebody, like a doctor, is really judging you and treating you poorly because of your connections with somebody who's suffering with addiction, if you can just get, like, compassionate toward him or her and say, wonder what their problem is, Like, for instance, if you're flying on a plane and Meredith's sitting next to you, you happen to have a cocktail, and she starts like shaking, you need to get compassionate toward Meridith. So I wonder what's going on in her life.
Yeah,
She's behaving this way.
I wonder how screwed up she is that she's looking down her nose at me.
Exactly. And the truth is, you're not really looking down your nose. You're afraid.
Yeah, I'm afraid. 100%. 100%. It just brings up those things. So I think that's my biggest takeaway for today.
That's my biggest takeaway, is that judgment is always about the other person, or you, if you're being the person judging. Because if you didn't have it, your mind would be open to what was ever going on and what the real experience was and who that person was as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a thought for next week's show. It's one that we've visited a little bit, but I'd like to go deeper into it.
Okay.
That is the forgotten child. And because I think that there's, and what I mean by the forgotten child is that when there is addiction in the family, whether it's a parent or, some other relative, I want to go more of the angle when it's the other sibling and the impact that it has on those not affected. I mean, those not afflicted with the disease. And it's a complex issue, but I think it's important to discuss, and I think it's important to go deeper into.
Yeah, and I think if you can go, if you are a parent right now and you have a child who's suffering with addiction and one who's not, you're bringing your awareness to it, and again, not judging yourself, but just bringing your awareness to it and realizing what you're doing can be helpful. Or if you were a child like we were, who did not have the addiction and so was kind of pushed to the side because you were all right, having not judging your parents, but seeing where that was coming from and trying to understand it. I think that's a great topic.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see you all right back here next week. Always remember, this is a show that is focused on you, people who love, support, and quite frankly have to deal with addicts. We'll see you next week.